which I will come back to. There's one specific thing. We were talking about the Privileges Committee and this big story about whether Boris will make a comeback at whatever level. And Dennis McShane, former Labour MP, and Edwina Currie, former Conservative MP, both said the real danger facing Boris is the detail and Charles Walker on that Privileges Committee.
Yes, we've known for a while that the Privileges Committee, which is something we've all slightly forgotten about since Boris Johnson left power, is still a big threat hanging over him. And Charles Walker, a Conservative MP who was a very adamant lockdown sceptic all the way through lockdown, very good on the detail, will grill Boris Johnson quite seriously. You've also got on that committee Chris Bryant, who does not pull his punches. He's
recused himself from the chair.
Yes.
Right, with Harriet Harman, who's a sharp old lawyer.
Yes,
the chair.
yes, and we've also got Laura Farris, another lawyer,
yes.
Conservative MP, who is a very close ally of Rishi Sunak's on that committee too. Not that that should cloud her judgment, and I'm sure it wouldn't, but it's pretty serious panel that he'll be facing.
It's about focus, isn't it?
Very focused.
Talking of focus, I know you've been doing some stuff on this and you talked about it a little bit earlier on. I was really knocked out by conversations that we had yesterday about NHS reform and about the stuff that Starmer has written himself in the Telegraph today about NHS reform. The NHS has to reform to survive, otherwise it will be dead in the water. I mean, that is almost Sir Keir Starmer speaking a different language.
It's fascinating, this, because we saw a couple of weeks ago Wes Streeting, who is the Shadow Health Secretary, who is considered to be on the right of the Labour Party, coming out with this plan for the NHS, which essentially involved really quite serious reform, and he used language which we really haven't seen from a senior Labour politician for a long time about not revering the NHS too much and not venerating it in this way that we do, like it's a sort of religion, because that makes it impossible to reform. And off the back of that, Keir Starmer was questioned quite a lot on what he made of Wes Streeting's remarks, and it was sort of felt in Westminster that Wes Streeting might have been I can't think of the word, but sort of ad-libbing a little bit and making up policy on the trot. But today, Keir Starmer has well and truly backed what Wes Streeting is saying. And he's got some very serious proposals for reform, including essentially preventing GPs becoming sort of the gatekeepers of the NHS as they are. So under Labour's plans, someone with a serious back pain, for example, could refer themselves to a physiotherapist rather than having to go through the NHS. It also allows Labour to bang on again
about not privatising the NHS because the GPs running their practices as little businesses is a kind of form of privatisation. But we're streeting on health, John Ashworth on welfare, particularly disability benefit, Bridget Phillimson this morning on child benefit could be even bigger than the NHS. These young thinkers are dragging him kicking and screaming into what could be a big reform election.
Absolutely. It is sounding like a very big reform election. I went to Jonathan Ashworth's speech about welfare policy last week, and some of what he proposed was really quite radical. He's thinking of completely overturning the way that job centres work.
Ian Duncan Smith's think tank.
Starting them again. Yes, at the CSJ.
Fascinating choice of venue.
Fascinating, absolutely. And, yeah, really radical proposals on basically ripping up job centres and starting again, changing the way the whole welfare process works, enabling people who've been on benefits to get into work and then back on benefits more easily. Sounds a bit technical, but it's actually pretty big reform. As for Bridget Phillimson, a name that, you know, we didn't really know a few months ago, her childcare reforms would be hugely radical. I mean, they're not costed yet, so let's not speak too soon. But we know that at the moment, you know, there's almost no free childcare at all for under fours, 30 hours a week between 3 and 4, nothing before that. She's suggesting that Labour would offer childcare for all parents between the ages of 0 and 11. Absolutely no idea how they could possibly afford that, but, you know, that would be a seismic change.